Good evening, my name is Lemon Jai. This is News Review. Thank you for being there. Coming up for you on the show today, President Adam Barrow holds meeting in Dungu Charen amid the presidential campaign, which kicked off yesterday. We have a report for you on the president's rally there in Dungu Charen in the North Bank region. Esa Fall has also unveiled his manifesto. He did that today at a big press conference. We have a report for you on that too. But also, the US Ambassador Richard Carl Paschall will be my guest today. He'll be speaking on the election there. Before that, let's quickly get into the newspapers and see what they are saying. We'll begin with the Standard newspaper. Their lead report is saying IEC reject 6 appeals. The Independent Electoral Commission yesterday confirmed that it has dismissed the appeals of 6 aspirants whose nominations were rejected last week. Pamakang Khan, the PRO of the electoral body, told the Standard that the appellants are CA, GMC, GAP, ANRD, and the independent aspirants of Papa Fall and Alhaji Mamadi Kurang. So we've seen the developments that have been taking place today. Alhaji Mamadi Kurang backing Doi, Halifa Saleh there. We've also seen ANRD, Lamin Bojang backing President Adama Barrow. So there's been a lot of movements regarding these leaders there. Away from that, GMC vows to protest against my party's disqualification. The Gambia Moral Congress Diaspora President has disclosed that the party supporters living abroad will organize a massive protest against the Independent Electoral Commission's decision to reject party leader my party's nomination. The electoral body Saturday declared only 6 candidates to contest next month's presidential polls, rejecting the nominations of GMC and 14 other aspirants, mainly independents. Barrow tells journalists to be impartial as campaign starts. President Adam Barrow has urged Gambian journalists to report accurately and remain impartial as his campaign for re-election in December starts. Addressing journalists shortly before he was accompanied to the ferry terminal by thousands of NPP supporters, President Barrow said, "We urge the media to report accurately. We don't want you to support anybody, but just be accurate." The president's words there. The Point newspaper, George sends former NIA DG orders out of court. That's the embattled former Director General of the NIA there, Yankuba Baji. Justice Kumba Silla Kamara on Tuesday sent 5 former officials of the National Intelligence Agency out of his court for refusing to enter the dock. So we'll leave it at that for the news first. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Stay with me. Wonderful, welcome back. So presidential campaign is upon us. Campaign started officially yesterday with all the 6 candidates in action. Well, at least one of them will wait until Sunday, the GDC. Yesterday, the president crossed to the North Bank region. He held a meeting in Dungu Charen where he canvassed for votes, spoke to voters. More in this report by Mati Sengor.
Electoral campaign officially started in the Gambia on the 9th November for the December 4th presidential election. This is the first election since Gambia became free from a totalitarian regime. 6 aspirants vying for presidency, among them is incumbent Adama Barrow. He started his campaign in Nyumi yesterday, where the Minister for Tourism and Culture, Hamad Ba, told Nyuminkers at Nyungu Charen that if they vote for President Barrow, they'll enjoy development dividends.
ndax boo leen amee courant yokku dina am si réew mi bu liggéey yoon bi yokku dina am si réew mi buñ fi defee lopitaan yokku dina am si réew mi ma ne te mbir mi Adama ko yor te mbir ne Adama saxul gis nga buur ndi omat dafa am luñ say seet ak jega na redet loxtel buur dafa yam mandarga roog omat ak jega yi mandarga benn mandarga bi ñuy njëkk a seet si yow mooy lan mandarga ne ado xëy na day dogal ten refe mooy yërmande ten def yërmande jub o jof bëgg nit ñi o bëgg wiin we bëgg sa réew bug lanqe doo tooñ kiro gom yàlla bi ma yaroo bi jaamu yàlla bu mat sëkk waxee ko jaamu yàlla xam moom maa bi mujjee mooy lan te defal ak na ten refe mooy warsak buur day am warsak o maata jega yi warsak te buur to ma doo seet nit di ko uta naan ana buur bi kan la kii la am kene la doo waan kilo kam ne wene laya waxee ko ndax o xana yo boo ko séenee rek o deew yo kangan rek danga xam ne waajango am yo xaxango Adama nag boo leen ko séenee rek xam ne Adama nga ne président fe ko yo waaye am na ñoo xam ne boo leen di wut am na ñi nga waane naa deno waada ñi wut a waada den surtout góor gu gàtt googu daa ko ko bu xaga danga koy lijjanti naan anam fii la am kene la waadan kam no ine waa kinooga ma ne te jox leen Adama yeneen juróomi at te ko da Adama ki la be taxala mooy njëriñi réew mi ten waa ko bis lanqe mooy jàmmi réew mi def jàmm feen lanqe mooy yokkute réew mi ten dafa baax taxee lanqe mooy suñ jàmm ñun ñëpp ten dafa jàmm ñu na fop bési woote nag comme naanaat élection fee bési woote comme naanaat élection fee bu kenn tukki naam bu kenn tukki baro lega ñaaɗi am na ndongo yi naan ataaya bidanti duñ dem woote ji a jega ngoor ka moom yeda ataaya ɗon kilo karta am na ñuy dem ngenti dem ceet duñ woote a jega waanaandi daal mbot mbanguloog ɗon woote bii élection feet bii o xeet boo yor Gambia den taxu Gambia nañ leen dóor boo xam ne nga woote na xawa andoona ye suñ fi jógee inoxanga yo meen liggéey yëpp ay damm.
Incumbent Adama warned Gambians to be careful during this election. In his words, there is a ballot box which is synonymous with angry people, people who belittle others, and people who insult others. The president asked if it is safe to give the country to someone who wants revenge and an angry person.
danga war di xalaat nga seet lan nga war a defal sa ñi pour wàññi seen coono naka nga dimbalee sa waa dëkka noonu nga war a xalaatee waaye waruloo nekka di xas nit ñi di saaga nit ñi di tiitalloo nit ñi di leen tuutilloo kon nag moytu leen su élection bii am na kees boo xam ne saaga yu gën a foor foofu lañ si kees boobu lañ nekk ñi nga xam ne dañ mer si kees boobu lañ nekk ñi nga xam ne dañ gom ne ñoom ñoo moom Gambia si kees boobu lañ nekk ñi nga xam ne dañ dee xaajaale nit ñi ñooñu si kees boobu lañ nekk ñi nga xam ne dañ mer si kees boobu lañ nekk ndaa or na ñu jox sun réew mi ku nga xam ne dafa mer ndaa or na ñu jox nit sun réew ku nga xam ne dafay fayu ndaa or na ñu jox sun réew mi ku nga xam ne dafay xeex kon élection bi dañ si war a bàyyi xel élection bi important la seetlu leen bu baax a baax.
However, he told people of New Charen that he would provide jobs for the youth to curb irregular migration, as he also have a project of $50 million and will help fishermen with canoes.
am na benn yóbbal bu ma leen amal yóbbal bi mooy si wàllu nappa gis nañ ne sun nappa bi dafa dellu gannaaw te gis nañ sun xale yu bari nekkuñ di liggéey te gis nañ ne xale yu bari ñu ngi dem si yooni gannaaw bi ñu bari ñu ngi dee si yooni gannaaw bi ñu ne foog ñu def ay pexe pour ñu dimbale xale yooyu pour ñu mun a am liggéey ñu ne kon foog ñu liggéey si wàllu nappa bi ñu waxtaan ak sun ay partenaires faat na yoo xam ne dañ oolu suñ nguur gi pare liggéey ak ñun pour dimbale xale yi fu mu nekk nii am nañ endorsement boo xam ne dañoo am $50 million $50 million boobu dañ see jënd ay gaal fu nit ñi di nappee tam ñu liggéey ko pour mu baax ñu defaral leen foofu ay storage ñu train xale yi pour ñu mun di dem di nappa di am xaalis ñu mun a dimbale seen boppa mun a dimbale Gambia pour Gambia dem si kanam am na yóbbal boobu pour waa Gambia te waa Gambia xam nañ ma man du may waxantu man lu ma wax rek ma def ko te yàlla daf ma si suturaal Amad Ba lu mu wax mooy dëgg yàlla daf ma defal wërsëg looloo tax mbooleen lu ma wax ni dama koo liggéey rek yàlla daf ma dee dimbali moom nañ koo def ma wax waa Looma ñoomi ne ak waa Nungu Caaren président Barrow man maay borom ambulance yi maay borom yoon yi man maay borom courant yi kon maa ngi leen a wax ne seen docteur ñëw na kon seen feebar faju na aw naa si yoon bi xam naa yoon bi nu mel Amad Ba wax na leen fii di bu ñëwee si juróomi at yi yoon yu ma liggéey si biir Gambia ñun ñoo liggéey yoon yi Hakalaan bi man maay liggéey Sabax Sanjal man maay liggéey Saalum ak Ñaani Jaa man maa nekk di liggéey Kiyang man maa liggéey Lamin Koto Passamas man maa liggéey Basse Koyna man maa liggéey Banjul man maa nekk di liggéey Costa Road man maa nekk di liggéey di Combo Roads kon man maay borom yoon yi waaye si beneen yóbbal bi mooy depuis bu Gambia sosoo ñu ngi am ay alkaali kilifa lañu alkaali yaa liggéey la wala mboolem kuy liggéey bi Gambia dañ lay fay waaye alkaali kenn fayu ko te gan bu ñëw si alkaali lay dem nguur lum soxla si dëkk bi alkaali bi lay oo mitin bu oote alkaali mooy dem foofu problème bu am si dëkk bi alkaali bi mooy aate kon xanaa alkaali bi du nit xanaa alkaali bi moom waruñ koo fay looloo tax ma ne leen alkaali foog ñu fay alkaali léegi nag isi naa kees député yi signé nañ ko man signé naa ko suma nguur gi endorse nañ ko mu ngi si sun budget bi January 2022 mboolem alkaali bu eewoo Gambia président Barrow dina la fay $2,000 si biir Gambia fii mboolem alkaali ñett dinañ dem fay January 2022.
Incumbent Barrow, speaking during his campaign yesterday, said, come 2022, all alkalis in the Gambia will be receiving each $3,000 a month. TFN News Review, Moti Senghor.
Esa Fall is one of the contenders in this race. Today, well, he spent the day unveiling his manifesto to members of the media. More in this by Christian Conte.
Speaking to pressmen, presidential candidate Esa Fall noted that the blueprint for a national turnaround is a comprehensive breakdown of action points his presidency will work on when elected in December 2021. He stated that for the positive transformation of the Gambia, there is need for competent heads, able hands, appropriate tools, and abundance of result-oriented Gambians, supported by a leadership with ideas to turn around the country for prosperity.
I am running for president for our beloved Gambia because our country is standing at a crossroads and regressing while our people continue to suffer the indignities of poverty. The cost of living is skyrocketing out of reach of many of our citizens, including the working poor. And there are no effective mechanisms in place to prevent unreasonable price hikes. The ordinary people are at the mercy of predatory businesses whose primary interest is to make profits, while the government continues to impose punitive taxes that further impoverish our people. The sick and vulnerable are uncared for. Educational institutions are starved of resources. Frontline workers are paid unlivable wages. The youths are unemployed, and I dare say even unemployable, and women and girls continue to be subjected to outdated cultural biases that relegate them to second-class citizens.
He further noted that the Gambia is not in need of yet another long policy document, as many of such exists. What the Gambia needs, he says, is an action plan which would serve as a blueprint for development.
What do we commit to? We promise that we would double GDP per capita in 10 years. We can do it. You know what? Senegal is already doubling our GDP. Ours at 2020 is $787 per capita. Senegal is $1,487. If we perform as well as Senegal, we can double our GDP.
His first 100 days as president, Esa promised to double the country's GDP in 10 years and tackle the scourge of youth unemployment in 5 years.
And what will we do in our 100 days in office? The presidency of Esa Fall will be ultra-ambitious and hyperactive in its work and pursuit of inclusive, responsible, and sustainable development. The first 100 days in office will set the tone, pace, and work ethic for the presidency. We will listen to all political parties, stakeholders, and development partners on specific programs, projects, and activities. But we shall start by implementing a portfolio of activities to pave the way for the transformative national turnaround.
He also promised to address the issue of corruption, build the healthcare system, and ensure Gambian troops are capacitated to take over the security of the country when elected president. Reporting for the Fatu Network, I am Christian Conte.
Thank you very much. I am Lunjai. So today, my guest will be the Ambassador of the United States to the Gambia, Ambassador Richard Carl Paschall. He's my guest today. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for coming once more on my show.
Always good to be here with you, Lyman, and the rest of the Fatu Network team.
Very well, thank you, thank you. You've been around for quite some time as Ambassador of the U.S. to the Gambia. The Gambia, we have presidential elections in about 4 weeks. I know you wrote an op-ed last week regarding this democratic process. First, let's try to talk about the role of your country, the United States, in terms of supporting other democracies around the world, Gambia in particular. Talk to us about the support that America has been given the Gambia in terms of its democratic process.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about what is our core policy approach here, which is to support the aspirations of the Gambian people who courageously went to the polls in December 2016 and chartered a new course for the country, and it created an opportunity, an opening for that to happen. And in support of those aspirations, the United States bilateral investment in the Gambia has climbed steadily. We're now up to over $40 million of bilateral investment, multi-year programs, focused primarily on democracy and governance, but also in supporting economic prosperity through the Millennium Challenge Corporations program, which we hope will launch just in the very near future.
Yeah. So now you wrote an op-ed. I mean, in terms of what you have observed since the change 2016 to now, you wrote an op-ed and you're talking about the issue of intimidation-free elections in Gambia. What have you observed?
Sure. I had not been to the Gambia before I arrived in March of 2019, so I certainly am drawing on the experience of my colleagues who had been assigned here before and those who are here in 2016. At least my understanding in talking with many Gambians is that at that point in time in history, there was a tremendous amount of intimidation from government. People were afraid to speak freely, to express their opinions, especially if they ran contrary to the former president. And as a result, that really stifled the opportunity for free expressions, political expression, including with the opposition parties. Of course, we all know opposition leaders were thrown in jail during the campaign period. And so there was clearly intimidation involved in the electoral process. We don't see that now. I would highlight that not only did the president commit to a free, fair, transparent, equitable process in his presentation of his nomination papers last week, he also did so with me in a meeting that he and I had in the last few days to review various aspects of our bilateral relationship. But unprompted, he stated that his fervent belief is that there needs to be a free, fair process and that he will accept the decision of the voters, as have all of the political leaders. They've all committed to a violence-free, peaceful, and transparent process. And I think that's a significant departure from what we saw as recently as 2016. And we really applaud the commitment of the Gambian people to this process. The energy we see, the enthusiasm, is really palpable. You can feel it.
Yes.
We saw it when the nominees were going to the IEC the other day.
A massive 26 nominees.
A massive 26. Of course, many were disqualified for a variety of legal reasons. There are appeals that are underway, and those will be, I'm sure, adjudicated fairly by the appropriate authorities. But yeah, it's an exciting time. People are definitely engaged across the country. When I have traveled up country as part of the voter registration process, what I found is even in small villages, kilometers off of the highway, you had people turning out with enthusiasm to register to vote. And I really applaud, it's a very good process. I think it's been run very, very well. The IEC clearly has an excellent process to do the voter registration. Having met with the IEC on several occasions, both just our embassy, but also as a part of the diplomatic and development community, I'm very impressed with their preparedness for this election and very impressed by their commitment to impartiality. I think that's very clear and evident that they take their responsibilities very seriously, and I think they're prepared to have a good election.
The issue of the participation of citizens is very important in an election, women and youth particular. Where do you see Gambian women and Gambian youth in this whole thing?
Well, again, when I went to those voter registration sites, all the way up to Farafeni, I was at several sites in the Foni, I was at Gunjur, I was in Brikama, and several villages in between. And you know, you saw the women turn out in large numbers. As all Gambians know, a far higher proportion of the registered voters are female. I think that reflects the fact that women are deeply concerned for the future of their country because of how it impacts both them and their families. And so they want to be a part of this process. They want to be a part of the process of charting that future. When it comes to youth, I have to tell you, I've been so inspired in meeting with many youth across the country. And again, I've been all the way from Kartong to Fototo, from Bara to Wasu, and I've met with a lot of youth at the senior secondary school level, as well as in other venues, and they inspire me. They are engaged, They're asking the right questions, they're asking tough questions. They want to be a part of the democratic process. At most of the voter registration sites I visited, the majority of the IEC workers at the sites were young people, 24, 25, 26, maybe up to 30. Many of them told me they had taken their vacation time to work for the IEC because they felt so strongly that it was important that they be a part of the elections process to help ensure that all Gambians can cast their votes freely and fairly. And I just was really impressed by their commitment to the democratic process.
And then the election of the Gambia is turning out into some sort of a high stakes affair. All the candidates want to win. And so the atmosphere has been a little tense. People being a little apprehensive that there could be conflict, there could be violence here and there, dispute, all of that. What should the citizens do? What should they focus on? Because if you look at the leaders, what you see most of the time is that they focus on their opponents, on the person, instead of the message, the ideas. So what do you think citizens should do as a way of making sure this process goes on smoothly?
Well, I think there are 3 key points. I think the first one is to focus on what the message and the program and the plans and the qualifications of each candidate, what those are, and to focus on what that means in that individual citizen's life. Which one do they think has the best plan, the best program, and maybe the best track record at being able to competently implement those kinds of plans. So that's number one. Number two, frankly, be aware that there's a lot of disinformation out there.
Right.
Now, Gambians are unfailingly respectful when they see each other and hospitable when they meet people, whether they know them or not. And I just encourage the same be true on social media, because what we do see on social media is that oftentimes it's a little bit harsher than any Gambian would ever act in person. But be aware that there are almost certainly people on social media who are doing so because they wish to agitate people. They passions that maybe could get out of control and incite anger in some cases. So just be aware of that, and just, again, Gambians are wonderfully warm, hospitable, compassionate people, and please be that way when it comes to the political process as well. I think thirdly, it's just to observe the fact that all of the political parties have committed themselves to a peaceful, transparent process that affords Gambians the opportunity to freely and without intimidation cast their ballots, cast their marbles on December the 4th. And I think it's really important that all Gambians come together to also endorse that spirit of stability, of peace, that affords an environment that they can all together, whether they agree or not on the politics, or whether they agree or not on their favorite candidates, that they all know that what they want is the best for their country. And I think that's an important message that all Gambians, I think, would agree with.
And then you have the Inter-Party Committee platform of all the leaders. This is a platform that is recognized by almost all international organizations, including countries. Your government, I'm sure, must have been, through your embassy, of course, must have been engaging the Inter-Party Committee as a way of making sure that we have the right situation as a country during this process, right?
Yes. I think the IPC has done a really good job of providing that venue where the political parties can come together and find constructive means to address any disputes or differences that they may have, and to put forward that positive message of looking for a peaceful, transparent electoral process that they all will compete in. And as I said in that op-ed the other day, this is a competition of ideas. This can't be a war or a violent struggle. This has to be a competition of ideas where Gambians get to evaluate and assess the candidates for office, whether it's the presidential elections in December or the local and legislative elections coming up in April, is to look at the candidates and to gauge and judge which one they believe can best carry forward the democratic transition process and bring economic prosperity to the Gambia. It's been a very challenging couple of years with the COVID pandemic and the real hit on tourism. We're looking forward to, if we can get those vaccination rates up, making this not just the smiling coast, but the smiling and safest coast in Africa, so those tourists can come back in numbers. And so, I think it is very, very important that people maintain that sense of wanting to see the democratic process advance in this country.
What do you make of our voting system? In the Gambia, we use the marble, the drum system. That is what we have, different from the paper.
Right. It's fascinating. I will admit, and I with apologies to the chairman of the IEC, I know he is an advocate for electoral reform, as are we, as is my government. We do support the reforms that the IEC has proposed and that are in the electoral reform bill, as well as the reforms that were in the draft constitution we think are quite important to the future of electoral processes in the Gambia. But I'm excited to see the marble voting process. There's a part of me that's
so you came in 2019, so obviously
I wasn't here in 2016, so there's a part of me that's really excited to see this in action. And the way it's been described to me by my Gambian friends and colleagues, it's quite straightforward. And I will say, obviously, the logistical challenges, if there had been 23, 24 candidates, were quite profound.
Would have been nightmarish.
It would have been quite a challenge. But I have to say also, when in meeting with the IEC, they were prepared for that. Because of the number of parties that had registered and the number of individuals who had stated their intent to be independent candidates, they had developed an entire contingency logistics plan to ensure that they could meet that demand if needed, and they were very well prepared for that.
How about those who might be out there and say, here is the United States trying to interfere in our internal, because these are some of the things, the comment that you come across, they will be like, okay, they're trying to interfere in our internal affairs. What will you tell them?
We favor no candidate or party in this election. Yes. As a fellow democracy, and we have supported for many, many years the democratic aspirations of the Gambian people and the hopes of Gambians for many years to have a better situation where they could express themselves freely and where there was respect for their rights, for their fundamental human rights and liberty. And we were very privileged and proud to support the Gambians as they sought to achieve that, and then to support the transition efforts over the last several years, both with government and with civil society. This has not been only focused on government, and it's not only been focused on civil society. It's to enhance the capacity of both to continue to implement democratic reform that advances these principles. I'm not seeking, as I said, I don't favor any candidate or party. We are here in support of the democratic process as a fellow democracy. We believe very firmly in our history that democracy is the best form of government, that it is important for governments to take into account the desires of the people, and the only way really to understand that is through the democratic process, the electoral process.
And specifically, what are some of the things, I know the elections are different, Gambia and US, but specifically what are some of the things that you think Gambia can learn from the US in going about conducting an election?
Oh, well, again, transparency. I think it's very important. I know I have had some Gambian friends ask me about my opinion about how to resolve disputes in elections.
Yeah.
There is a whole disputes resolution process here. Had the good opportunity last week to be attending a conference with His Lordship, the Chief Justice, and the Honorable Minister of Justice, and several, the Gambia Bar Association and others, and I asked about how that goes. I will tell you that they explained the process to me, and they are ready and prepared to adjudicate any disputes that arise with the election when it's the time of the courts to weigh in. The IEC is prepared, of course, to address any disputes or concerns that arise as well, just as they did and very effectively during the voter registration process. So I believe that transparent resolution of disputes is really important, whether that's through a bureaucratic administrative process or whether that's through a judicial process. And again, like I said, I think the Gambian authorities are ready and prepared should disputes arise to address those and resolve them transparently and completely in accordance with law and regulation.
I have also seen in the past, and even this time around, I've seen some international diplomatic missions going about monitoring or observing Gambian election all the time. The EU, for example, every election cycle, they will be here to monitor and observe. We have not been seeing that from the US. Do you do that at all?
We do. And we will be fielding monitoring teams for this election and along in coordination with other partners in the diplomatic and development community, both, as you know, the European Union, as they announced, has a large monitoring mission. Also, the UN system will be monitoring the elections, as will we. We will have several teams in the field going to various voting sites across the country. We'll also have a monitoring team back at the embassy to filter and analyze results, also, of course, to update Washington. One thing I want to ensure is very clear is that my government, and it's not just the executive branch, it is also the legislative branch, is very passionate about supporting the Gambia, and that's why we've seen this expansion in bilateral aid, also our strong support, both financial and otherwise, to the UN system of agencies and the work that they've been doing here in the Gambia. We expect to have a colleague from Capitol Hill with us during the elections monitoring process, and just to demonstrate the fact that this is, like I said, the legislative branch of the United States government is also keenly interested in the success of the democratic transition here in the Gambia.
And do you have any specific program to put across with the civil society during the period?
Well, we have engaged in capacity building for civil society to ensure that they understand their obligations and responsibilities as well as their rights under Gambian, the Constitution as well as law. We think that that's very important. Civil society is a manifestation of the interest of the citizens of a country and how they express themselves and can exert influence in the political process. It complements the elected legislative representatives who are the directly elected people who represent the people of the Gambia, and also, of course, those members of government that are seeking to advance a governmental program and agenda. But yes, we have been working with civil society to build their capacity to effectively represent their interests in the electoral process.
Let me ask you this, though. I know it's also different in America, the role of technology. I know in America, technology, you can't compare it with Gambia, and it has a massive role when it comes to things like election and all of that. The technology, how can Gambia leverage technology as a way of ensuring that this is done in a very remarkable way?
Well, I think, let me talk about that from two different perspectives. One is obviously the government's adoption of sort of an e-commerce, e-government platform, and I know this is a serious objective of the government. They do plan to do this more in the future, including for dissemination of information to the citizenry themselves. They have moved in this direction for the last several years in many different respects. For example, the Ministry of Finance publishes now on their website the citizens budget, which explains sort of a synopsis of the budget and the expenditures that are forecast and the programs that the government seeks to implement with the taxpayers' money. The judiciary has, frankly, I think, an extremely well-done website to explain the structure and role of the courts and how people can access justice. I think it's really well done. But in general, the Gambian government is moving this way, including for e-banking, e-finance. Now, so that's set on the governmental side, but I think on the private sector side, we're seeing an explosion of the use of technology, and certainly among the individual citizens. You know, I was speaking with one of the major cell phone and internet service providers here maybe 6 or 7 months ago, and they told me that every time they put up a cell antenna up country, it's overwhelmed within a matter of weeks, and so they have accelerated their deployment schedule to get better internet access across the country. And this is for data. I mean, obviously voice as well, but for data. And so I think internet penetration is growing at a very rapid pace, and so average citizens in the Gambia increasingly have access to information, and how they use that access is very, very important. And so it will be important for the government and the private sector to step up their game when it comes to delivery of information and services through technology.
And where do you see the media in all of this process, their role? What do you see?
No, thank you. This is really important. And I've been really impressed with the coverage from the media here thus far. I read the newspapers. I also have watched your broadcasts and other online broadcasts. I applaud the independence that's being shown. I made a comment to a journalist not too long ago that it seemed like the comments being made on the news broadcast were people, representatives of every party, were critical because they thought the journalist was against their party, but that to me says that journalist is doing something really right and that they're asking tough questions equally of every party and every candidate for office. I think that's really important. The news media is there to help inform their fellow citizens. That's a significant role of the news media. It's to help dispel myths where myths occur and where mistruths get told. The news media can be a crucial part of setting the record straight. And I do think it's very important for a free society to have a free press. This is a core foundational principle of the United States, of course, as you know, and we certainly support that here in the Gambia.
Do you have any additional thing to say?
Just again, I exhort all Gambians to be engaged in the political process. Those of you who did register to vote and you're registered now, please make sure you get to the polls on the 4th of December to cast your marble for your preferred candidate.
Because that is very important. The issue
very
of people,
important.
People get registered, and when it's voting day, they refuse to go and vote.
You got to show up. It's a Saturday, so it's in theory, you should be able to travel. If you're not registered, if you're working away from a place you're registered, you should be able to travel back and get your ballot cast, your marble cast on that Saturday, December the 4th. December the 4th. Everybody knows there's an election coming, so that's no surprise. But hopefully people that took the time to get registered, because that did take time and it did take commitment. I hope that commitment continues through the election and they do show up on election day. Would love to see record turnout in this election. I think, as I said, Gambians have really embraced their ability to express themselves. Gambians have embraced the fact that they have a significant role to play. If any Gambian out there thinks their vote doesn't matter, that their vote doesn't count, don't ever think that. Sometimes it literally is one vote that makes the difference in an election. So make sure you get to the polls on Saturday, December 4th, and make sure you cast your ballot. Be there collegially in the spirit of compassion and hospitality with your fellow Gambians, and treat each other with dignity and respect, which is the hallmark of Gambian culture. So thank you.
Very, very important. And the difference here is that we don't have early voting or mail ballot, where you'll have to vote.
Stay tuned. Who knows? if the citizenry would like to see that, I'm confident the government can develop the legal foundation and the regulations to do that.
So thank you very much, the Ambassador.
Thank you so much, Lama. Good to see you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming. That is the Ambassador of the U.S., Ambassador Richard Carl Paschall. He was my guest today. Thank you for being there. Until tomorrow. Goodbye. Thank you very much.